You're listening to Data Center Therapy. Please take a number, and an engineer will be right with you.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Data Center Therapy, a podcast from IVOXY Consulting that talks all things IT with a healthy dose of empathy. I'm your host, Matt Yette, and I'm one of many today. But of course, I'm joined by my co-host, Mr. Matt Cozzolino. Matt, morning.
Good morning.
It's really good to see you.
You too. It's been a minute.
I think we've had a couple of episodes that we've meant to record, and two different people on two different days experienced power outages.
Yeah.
And it's been a windy month.
It has been.
So have you lost power out there out in BFE?
Covington, yes. Actually, surprisingly.
I didn't say that.
Yeah, well, whatever. Covington's still out there.
Yeah, well, that's good. That's good. I've toyed with the idea of a natural gas generator, like whole home generator kind of thing. It'd be nice. Help me stand up the old personal data center. And yet, the second I put that in, I know we'll never lose power again. Yeah. It will be the best thing that's ever happened for Puget Sound Energy if I buy a generator. So maybe you call Chip.
I've thought about it. It's on my 5-year plan list for stuff to do on the house.
Well, fortunately for our listeners, it's not just us today. We actually have not one, but two guests from IVOXY Consulting joining us today. And they've both been on once, I believe. So I guess we'll have to see here. But this is going to be a combo effort, and so forgive us if we step on each other, but it should be great. So first, I'll introduce Mr. Hoppy Shaw is joining us. Hoppy, good morning.
Good morning. How is everyone?
It's awesome to hear your voice. And we're also joined by Quinton Barber, our senior security consultant.
Hey, good morning. How's it going?
Good. It's really great to have everybody here in the virtual studio. We got to start doing in-person ones. That might be fun.
Gotta bring all my gear with us then.
Little round table. Little round table. Yeah. But okay, so the reason why we've got these two very smart gentlemen on the call with us today, sorry, Kaz, we're going to be talking about effectively device management for the 2020s, right? We've got, remote work, we've got zero trust, super important and prevalent concepts in our day-to-day work life. And how do we manage all of this? MDM, right? Mobile device management was really where this concept started with the whole BYOD wave in the early 2010s or late 2000s, effectively. And there were some people that hear BYOD and roll their eyes or shudder in fear. Mm-hmm. But we've gotten to the point now where every device, even desktops, they're not mobile, but they're devices that need to be managed. Mm-hmm. I would say, and managed in terms of I think even though deploying applications is a big part of that, that's not what we're worried about, I think, a lot of times today. So we've got Quinton and Hoppy, who are kind of the two sides of that half-moon cookie, where we've got the security aspect of things, and we've got the endpoint management and how that ties in with security. And I think between Quinton and Hoppy, respectively, that's a real tasty cookie. Sorry, guys, but to use that analogy, but yeah. So, all right, Quinton, I'm going to jump to you first. In terms of what I was just kind of going into and the whole aspect of device management, there are a lot of components to that, but security being probably the one at the top of everybody's mind. Can you go into that a little bit and what our concerns are?
Yeah. So, and I did IT for a couple of decades. So I know how this has been done, right? We forewent endpoint hardening and device management and a lot of compliance things, and deferred to having four walls, having a great firewall, really locking down networks and doing these things. A couple of years ago, things changed. We sent a lot of people home outside of the four walls, and we're not going to bring them back. There's studies from GitLab and RSM saying that the 36% of middle market companies are going to have remote workers going forward that didn't have them previously. 52% of employees would consider leaving their co-located company for a remote role right now. It's
100%. Yeah.
It's just crazy that this was the catalyst for sending people home. Over 2021, we had 58 0 days. That's a record. And it's not because we just all of a sudden got worse at building software, building applications, and securing infrastructure. It was just that it became prevalent out in the wild. So yeah, getting all this stuff under management and having a good process around it is absolutely critical to overall attack surface security.
I know you mentioned we'd put these walls up around our environment and we'd protect everything, and that's kind of that fortress model. And I think what a lot of our customers have done is the data center's in their office, so their office is already inside of their fortress. So before we even get into the, like, how do we do MDM, we could just move that data center into its own little environment and treat even the office, right, as if it were Starbucks, as if it were an outside entity, right?
Absolutely.
Well, that goes to the zero trust thing too, right? Whether you're here or there, the zero trust principle applies. It's not just for people who are out of the office, because everybody inside gets the whitelist, and all of a sudden,
Someone
one bad email puts
something in the parking
lot. That's
right?
that. I have one quick question. This is kind of a sidebar, but it sits on my mind from maybe this is a simpleton type question, right? But let me ask about, when it comes to zero trust, you still have users who have access to files, and those files oftentimes are critical. So let's say, zero trust, but you've certainly got higher risk users because the CFO and the accounting team have access to the company budgets, the company ledger, Is that simply do you just lean on backup and recovery to protect yourselves against ransomware at that point? And that's really the primary way. When you've got people who have access to files, how do you prevent those files from being locked in the first place?
So yeah, that's just overall access control. And maturity of your discipline. So if you're following zero trust, you essentially want your IT systems to make a decision every time somebody accesses something. Is this the right person, identity? Is this the right device? Is it compliant? Is it controlled? And should it have access right now to this file, to this network asset, to this application, whatever it may be, and make that decision. Thus, when Joe Nobody clicks on his thing down in manufacturing or wherever he may be, it doesn't kill your intellectual property, your financial data, all of that stuff, because no, Joe should never have access to any of that stuff.
So, Hoppy, what have you seen out there in terms of the endpoint aspect of it? With Quinton's security concepts layered in, how have you seen that out in the real world? Where do you see that lagging the most, right? Where is the biggest challenge? And like all things security, this is a very layered onion, right? And Quinton's nodding. And there is a lot of times we're having conversations with customers, and we're talking about a particular solution for a particular challenge. And the follow-up question that I always hear, and it's a valid question: does this also replace my X? Does this also do this? Does this also do that? And I think in a perfect world, we'd have one thing that you get, one SKU. Boom. It's a home run. It covers absolutely every layer. It secures, it monitors, it alerts, it logs, it proactively patches, all this. And so to that point, and we just went through this, Quinton, with a security assessment where we kind of, you dove deep and you basically showcased a number of pillars to say, this will lower your risk by this amount. It will give you an ROI of this amount. And so obviously it kind of showed, listen, if you only get one swing of the bat, you can do the most damage if you only get one swing, picking this layer. So from that, Hoppy, where are you seeing the most difficulty, and maybe also the easiest one to take a big bite out of crime, so to speak, right? Where if you only had one bite, right? Where does that start?
Buck, right?
Right. Thank you.
Well, of course, during the pandemic, when that started, the major concern was, well, we've got all these systems now that are no longer on premise. So how do we contact them and keep them up to date and do the things that we need to do? And I know we've talked about that. You guys have talked about that on the podcast a couple of different times. But one of the things that was I think the initial struggle is, okay, how do I keep the systems up to date? And then the second thing, and what I would say was the biggest bang for the buck if people are looking to secure their systems now, from an endpoint perspective, is the first and foremost, you should enable MFA on that endpoint, either as from an identity as a user or from a device. And that alone will, I think the latest statistic, and Quinton will correct me, I'm sure, but it's something like 99% or 98%. If you turn on MFA, it's gonna do wonders for preventing folks from getting access to your account to pose as your identity. And so, one of the things that we always look at when we talk to customers is, all right, what are the three things that you're doing? Number one, for multi-factor authentication. Number two, how are you connecting to corporate network? And number three, what type of device management are you using? Whether it be, we cover quite a few, but there's a lot of them out there. One of the ones we see a lot, of course, is Intune, because most folks have Microsoft products, and that's an easy kind of turn up, turn on, and get it going pretty quickly.
So, what about for like mobile devices? I know one of the concerns, at least anyone should have if you've got a modicum of understanding of technology, is if work owns this device, I shouldn't be doing any of my stuff on it. And I know I run into people that send personal emails from their work account, and it just bugs the crap out of me, that kind of a thing.
Mm-hmm.
So like, here's your phone, here's your laptop, here's your whatever. It's a company asset. But now we've got this layer of bring your own device, where here's my laptop, here's my phone. And what kind of concerns should I, as the end user, have about work, air quotes, putting this thing on my device so I can leverage it?
Yeah, it depends on the kind of device. I think, if Android, I think, to give Android props as a long time, iOS and Mac user and Windows before that, mobile device, I have had an Android at times. And I will say, in the enterprise, I think Android does a terrific job of separating those two things out. They give you a little work profile. Everything that you do for work is kind of contained in this true container. And then everything else you do on the device is, your own personal stuff. And there too, the two should meet. Yeah.
Your own personal and Google's, let's be honest, with Android.
Or whoever's, right?
Yeah, they're your coworker full time.
That's right. Well, but from a device standpoint, management standpoint, my experience has been that there's a pretty good separation there. iOS does the same thing. They do have a way to separate the two out. There are ways to put corporate apps on a personal iPhone and have that work in a corporate way, where you're not using one for the other. No one's going to be able to. Well, I don't want to say that, because that'll be misleading to some folks listening to this. But I will just say that I think the enterprise we have options to lock down devices to the point where, if you want to bring your own device, we can allow that to corporate resources, as long as we're implementing those things that I mentioned before. MFA is a huge one, a big thing. And then also, if we're doing device management, I'm absolutely going to make that device part of your authentication method, whether it be through the biometrics that are on the device or the fact that you own the device. I'm going to be using that as a way to get in through the front door.
Is the iOS portion of that, Hoppy, is that just leveraging those profiles that get pushed down, and then it provisions the email account, things like that, right?
Yeah, in the simplest term, it is just configuration profiles that come down. You can also put down certificates, though, to help with certain things, access to VPNs or Wi-Fi networks.
Certificate-based authentication is really cool for VPN, because then it can actually be an on-demand thing too, where, hey, if I want to reach out to this network or this subdomain, it will then spin up the which is really great. It's basically policy-based routing for your mobile device, and it's transparent, because you don't have to prompt for authentication every single time, which is neat too. Does that require, and I guess I'm getting a little bit into the weeds here, but just kind of one question: does it require, if I'm a company and Hoppy brings his personal iPhone, and I push down via mobile device management, I push down my profile, email app, corporate app, stuff like that, is it simply sufficient to yank the provisioning profiles from that device remotely, or in case of a lost or potentially compromised device, or does it require a full wipe of the device from the corporate end to secure that?
The way that you would normally do it is if there's two types of wipes. There's an enterprise wipe and there's a device wipe. Enterprise wipe in the MDM world simply means I'm going to take everything off that I put on as part of the enterprise. And so once you do that, that's exactly what it does. It removes any apps that I've pushed. It's removed any accounts that you've created with those apps, and it's pretty clean and seamless.
Pulls that sound back up.
I like that because you don't. There are very few qualifications then. Okay, bring your own device, fine, but we can wipe it if we need to. Like that really doesn't have to be a thing. There truly can. You truly can.
It's kind of that concern, right? This is my phone. I still want my stuff.
And you can maintain that, which is nice. Yeah. Quinton, you wanted to say something?
Yeah. Well, I was thinking as everyone was talking, and one of the things that I think people are missing through the last couple of years is the massive amount of technical debt they've incurred. And I know that is largely a developer's term, but I apply it back down into all IT and everything. And essentially the concept is you moved so fast in order to operate that you incurred some technical debt, some rework that you have to go back and do. One of the biggest things I've been seeing throughout the last couple of years is the stuff that broke, and it has just kind of gone kind of lackadaisical out there in the industry. People's old systems to manage things, SCCM or WDS or WSUS, or, and I know those are all Microsoft products, but whatever. they were largely low cost or free tools to manage endpoints in an environment, but a lot of that broke when people went remote and won't concurrently or in the future be able to manage those devices well when they're not on the network. The devices have to be VPN'd in order for that to work. The other stuff they did is they put out RDP sessions or virtual desktop infrastructure out on the internet without really securing that. They spun up a lot of shadow IT, Teams, WebEx, Zoom, everything was free for a little bit. And we got a lot of work there in consumption as far as those tools go, but did they get implemented well? Did they get locked down? Are they tied into your identity? Is there any kind of device compliance into those solutions? The other stuff we lost was the ability to manage URLs that are out there for companies. They were inside. You could manage your URL filtering. You could block, heaven forbid, porn or gambling or violence through your firewall. Now they're at home. How do you block that? We don't. Russia can connect to that endpoint now because they're just using their internet.
You mean you don't want to tunnel 300 users bandwidth through the home office and then back out?
No, really, that could be expensive.
Why is all this Netflix traffic going through the WAN?
There's some debt there that has to get paid back in order to secure this go forward plan that a lot of people haven't put in. They stopped spending money. They stopped doing CapEx. And they put a lot of IT projects on hold. So I think a strategy has to come back around to really encompass what is going to be the new normal for at least this decade, possibly the rest of the future.
I also think that a little tough love is necessary. I know a lot of people historically have worried about friction from their user base in terms of, there is being able to get things done efficiently. And then there's, I could lock my network down so tight that you can't get anything done. Well, we're secure, great, but you can't move, one ball from A to B. At the same time, it's I can say this, right? Been in the industry a couple decades now, like you, Quinton, and I'm a bit more jaded to the sensibilities of users. And listen, we're all users to a certain extent. At the same time, get on board or get out of the way, because is your ease of workability worth the company's compromise? And the answer is always no. And it doesn't matter if you're the CEO or if you're, Joe Nobody. No offense to Joe Nobody. And the fact of the matter is, it's not like IT or security. Whoever's in charge of implementing these controls wants to make things more difficult, but ultimately, there's a little bit of saving you from yourself, I think, too, in that I've had users reach out to me in the past, hey, can you reset my password to Sally123? And I'm like, no, I will not. No, I will not. And I think we all need to do a little better job of educating good best practices in terms of password management too, and rotating all of that, because it's a mess right now. Look under somebody's keyboard, you'll probably find a Post-it note. Yikes. But at the same time,
that's now more secure than.
Yeah, at the same time, it's, I'm sorry, but where have you been the last 3 years? Like, we've got a problem, and it starts with personal security practices, and it's not as easy, no, but recovering from ransomware is a lot harder. Yeah.
Yeah, and I think in some cases the pandemic's caused a lot of CTOs out there to reevaluate. Quinton was talking about technical debt. One of the things that I think CTOs are asking themselves now, as far as technology goes, and what endpoints the users are using, is, okay, well, first and foremost, let me question everything. Do I still need Active Directory authentication on these devices, or can I move it into some kind of hybrid mode, or can I get rid of my domain controllers on-prem? Is that something that I still need to do if I have a product that gives me profiles and configuration policies that are in line with group policies that I used to push out via domain controllers? What is Active Directory still needed, as far as a management tool for endpoints? Because if the majority of your applications and things are in the cloud, do you need to domain join, I guess, is really the more appropriate question, an endpoint, versus having somebody bring your own device. You put some profiles on there, you put your email on there, and then the next thing they have access to everything they need. There's maybe some on-prem applications, but that might be easier to get by, as opposed to just doing a full-blown Active Directory join. And the reason I mention that is because when we talk about MDM, it's just not the mobile devices. I feel like the endpoint, especially the last few years, it's become interchangeable with really everything on the endpoint. So a Mac OS, MacBook, a Windows Surface, a Dell laptop, Lenovo, a Chromebook.
Everything's treated as mobile at this point. That's kind of what I was talking about earlier, too. There is no real mobile. Everything's an endpoint, period.
And I just wanted to reassure, say exactly that's you're right on the nail with that, because most companies out there now, they're looking for a tool that not only just manages their mobile devices, they want to manage everything. Give me a tool that'll do everything. And a lot of the manufacturers now are creating those tools for those companies. We're going to give you everything out of the box. You can manage everything, or you can just manage a small portion, whatever's convenient for you as a company. But it goes back to that original statement that I made, where if you're in technology and you're in charge of technology, look at your whole environment and figure out, all right, how can I streamline things? How can I move myself away from these traditional methods that maybe I no longer need, because there's other alternatives out there that are either cheaper from a tech debt perspective, or there's an easier way, more efficient way to do it.
To kind of piggyback on that, when I'm doing our assessments, our security assessments, I'm always recommending people find those integrations that go together, right? When I look at remote endpoints and endpoint protection platforms, I try and find a vendor that does both, because there's a lot of integrations you can get between the two. Unified endpoint management, harden those endpoints, manage those endpoints, be it Android or iOS or Windows or Mac or whatever you got. But then tie that into your endpoint protection platform so that there's some go-between, some ease of deployment, application management, all that stuff gets in there. I consider UEM, endpoint management, a security tool. I know it's not from most other people's perspectives, but that's the way I see it. I see it as critical to the overall hardening of your environment, your attack surface.
So one of the things that I've been curious, and we've talked about these endpoint management tools as if they've just existed and we can use them, but in my previous time, just a couple of years ago, when I've touched Meraki's is the one I'm thinking of, the MDM tool there, it was specifically for Apple and Android. Are these tools now covering the gambit then? Can I treat my Windows laptop, my MacBook, my iPhone, my Android phone as an endpoint, and they're all through the same UI, same tool?
Yes.
you shaking your heads, but no one can hear you shaking your heads.
Listener, we're shaking our heads. Yes.
Okay, so that's interesting. And is it the next? Are they the next logical step from like WSUS? Is that kind of like the technical debt that you were talking about with SUS, or even Active Directory was built to be inside of this environment, and my thing is on the LAN, and now we're moving to this point where I'm interacting with these cloud services, so I need to authenticate differently. I don't have these things that are just a router hop away on the same network, so I have to form my packet, form my data between them differently.
Yeah, and I do want to clarify a little bit. I probably shouldn't have said Active Directory as much as I was talking about domain joining, because I think Active Directory can live on-prem, or in the sense of Microsoft, we can have all of that in the cloud, and have an Azure Active Directory. And
is there a fundamental difference between I joined my Active Directory and I'm in the corporate network, and I joined my Azure Active Directory device and I'm at home on a laptop? Is that a fundamental difference?
I will tell you the three ways that Microsoft looks at your device is either as Azure registered, hybrid AD joined, or Azure AD joined. There's three different methods there. And so, without getting too far in the weeds, Microsoft is going to look at your device, and it's either going to say, hey, this person has an on-premise domain controller. We're going to be hybrid now because the company is shipping that information into the cloud, so I can see it, in the cloud and on-prem. Or they're going to be completely Azure AD joined, where they just, wherever they are in the cloud, they will be monitored, and their device will be managed through Azure, more than likely through an endpoint solution like Intune for policies and different things like that. There are a lot of different MDMs out there that do kind of everything. I want to speak specifically to just two that we use a lot at IVOXY, which is Workspace ONE and Microsoft's Intune. Both, I think, do a terrific job of cleaning, going over the device, securing it, allowing you to put tools on it that can make it be easily manageable. So yeah, they do a terrific job with that.
I have a conceptual question. Call me a cynic, call me skeptical. Quinton, I'm going to maybe get your read on this the most. I'm looking for it in terms of, I hear what you were saying about take a single vendor, the integration and the holistic visibility into all these components and potentially layers too. So not only, out in terms of get my arms around the environment, but then vertically deep too, in terms of different layers of the onion that we were talking about. Sounds great, right? Sounds efficient, and you're in that ecosystem. Okay, now let's take a security principle where you don't bring back the same company to audit you year after year, not because you're unhappy necessarily with the guy last year, or vulnerability scanning. You don't want the same necessarily company pen testing every single year. It's just a best practice sometimes to rotate through vendors. Pardon me. Is there also a worry? On one hand, you want simplicity, which is great. On the other hand, do I trust? I don't want to pick on Microsoft, right? But everyone's probably thinking, oh, do I trust Defender to, because Windows has historically been the bastion of security and the beacon of hope for all things secure and locked. Like, I know I'm picking on being facetious, but ultimately, does that concept wash in what we're talking about, or is it more about the ability to manage outweighs the potential vendor agnostic approach?
Well, so I think it depends on how big the customer is, right? So if you're a small organization and you have a limited spend, you've got to get that kind of integration that you're talking about. I do like and let me couch that also in, there's no one vendor that's going to cover it all, right? Say you pick Microsoft, they have a great stack. They're Magic Quadrant leaders in many of the categories of security they're in. They don't do anything with your network. So you are going to have another vendor in there with your firewalls, your secure web gateways, and all these other tools so that you have some depth in vendor in that regard. If you're a much larger organization, you can be a little bit more selective. Maybe you're going best of breed in every single category. and you have the staff to actually make those integrations work and take advantage of all those and make them seamless. You're putting them all in a SIM. You've got orchestration and automation throughout your network. So you don't need to leverage those kind of integrations that a company like Microsoft or VMware builds for you. So yeah, it's dependent, and I know I say this all the time. Everybody's a snowflake. And I don't mean that in a derogatory way at all. Just everybody is a little bit unique. They have their own tech stack. They have their own business needs, and you've got to find the right solution that works in that.
Yeah, and that's such a fantastic answer. Is that we have a wide range of customers, both small business and enterprise. But the sweet spot is that medium-sized business. A lot of times, almost, AKA almost all, we don't have customers that have a dedicated security team, or maybe they have one or two security folks. And a lot of that is policy writing, but in terms of boots on the ground, they need assistance with, the software, the tools or services that can come in and pitch in and help them for 24/7 coverage. So yeah, it's usually, it's such a great point, Quinton, in terms of you need to manage your risk, and that has to scale with the size of your company. Listen, anybody can spend $1 billion and say I'm as secure as I could possibly be, but not everybody has $1 billion. It's just you have to take your reasonable approach to security based on what your resources are. I like
it. Kind
that.
of has to be a mindset change. It has to be the forefront. It has to be, we're doing this with security in mind, right?
It does,
Yeah.
And it can't be looked at as an extra cost. We've had conversations with customers who currently have no security posture, no log collection, and really like, well, we have, it's got to be a 2023 thing. It can't be now. Oh, well, let's keep our fingers crossed and burn some incense and hope that the next 12 months are pretty smooth, because it's that perilous out there right now. And it's not FUD. I hate to be the old boogeyman. I've never sold like that. I've never talked about solutions like that. It's what are your problems are, and what is the level of risk. And right now, it doesn't matter who you are, because it's no longer about, it is about, hey, we're going to leak this data. And a lot of companies would be like, please don't leak that data. And that's a problem. Now it's like, hey, we're going to just prevent you from getting to your data. And it doesn't matter who you are. Any company can access their systems. It's lights out overnight. And that's the risk. Yes, your data is maybe not valuable to somebody else, but it sure is valuable to you. And that's the risk that we're dealing with.
Well, yeah, and we build ROIs around that, right? This is not hard to figure out. You take a look at your last incident, and let's say statistically, 4 of our customers are going to have a bad day on Friday. Period. The end. That's statistically what's going to happen, and it sucks. But they can go back and do the math. They can say, okay, our last incident, we were down for 3 weeks. This is our next incident, so we are having an average run rate of 24 months or whatever, 36 months or whatever. So on average, we lose 1.5 weeks of revenue every 2 years. That is the cost of doing business. So if you can do a security project for less than that average per year annum you can generate an ROI on this project, because it's going to move out your statistical probability of having another incident in the next 24, 36 months. It's going to move it out to 4 or 5 or 6 years. Those are the kinds of things we try and look at and to quantify these things for our customers. It's not just throwing money into the wind. There is a measurable impact.
So as we wrap here, we've been doing an awful lot with security, an awful lot with identity and endpoint management. So I'm going to go to you, Hoppy, and tell me a couple of things that are really at the base core of what you've been doing lately that maybe not everybody listening is aware that we've been up to.
I think the biggest thing is we have been helping customers secure and manage endpoints that they were not managing before at all. So we've run across customers that have a whole fleet of MacBooks that they haven't touched because they didn't know how. And so we've been able to get those set up and enrolled in Apple Business Manager, have it be managed, and they have insight into that. I think the second biggest thing we've been helping with is moving or talking about moving some of their Active Directory things into the cloud. So, moving, looking at taking your Active Directory on-prem and just syncing that with Azure, and then starting to build some things within Azure to do things a different way. And I'm being vague because there's so many different things you can do up in that area.
Sure.
That I didn't want to mention it here, but those are the two biggest things.
And so I know I was a part of one of your solution proposal review, Quinton, last week. But if you wouldn't mind, just go into a little bit of really what you've been tackling lately that really could be of use to our customers.
Yeah. So just looking at vulnerabilities made a huge jump last year. They went from about 5% of all attacks to 10% of all attacks being the cause. So you have to patch your OS for sure. I mean, everybody knows that, but you also have to patch your applications. You got somebody walking around with Adobe Acrobat 7, that's a problem. Because I've had that same problem myself if I passed. But yeah, look at all of those things. Secure your traffic, your web traffic, even if they're remote. Find a secure web gateway or cloud-delivered firewall. Solutions like that will help you get your identity in order. Shadow IT, software as a service, just blew up over the last 2 years. You have identity all over the place. It's not just Active Directory on-prem. You have identity in your ERP, your CRM, your HR system, your expense system, whatever you're using. Get those in order. And this is from one of our vendors, actually. He told me if anybody is doing on-prem Exchange anymore, they should really, really look at one of the cloud options because there's just so many remote code execution opportunities in Exchange that it's just untenable right now for that to stay maintained for most organizations. So
awesome. Yeah, go ahead, Hoppy.
I just wanted to add one more thing. Coz asked earlier about Windows updates for WSUS, and I know a lot of the folks that listen to the podcast probably laugh because they know that as much as we as engineers have wanted to kill and get rid of WSUS, it never goes away. It's still here. But one of the things that I just wanted to point out to our customers and listening audience is that one of the things Microsoft, I think, has done really well in the last couple of years, especially during the pandemic, is create profiles and policies and ways for customers to simply put down an XML or config profile, if you will, of the updates that you want to allow onto your systems. And then you get that information directly from Microsoft's repositories. So you don't think of updates anymore as, well, I've got to go to a WSUS server, I have to approve all these updates, I have to download these updates into a central repository and then deploy them out. Microsoft, you can still do that, but Microsoft is trying to make it easier now for you to not have to do that. And that's the Windows Updates for Business piece. And there's other tools out there that you can use so that, and because that goes to your question, what about moving WSUS
full circle,
off
though, right?
Yeah.
It's you're talking about separating the management of it versus the data of it, and that to me is amusing because it's come full circle, because that was the reason everyone's got to download a 1 gig update, so let's cache it once. Now no one's home, no one's in the office, so let everyone download the 1 gig update, right? Yeah. That's exactly what you're talking about.
That's exactly right. And even if you're in a room with a lot of other people, maybe you're an office that uses Intune instead of WSUS, so you enable peer caching, so everyone's sitting on the same subnet. Through the advent of peer caching, can now move those updates around, and one person downloads and 25 people get it because you're sitting in the same room. So that's another neat feature. But I just wanted to mention that.
Nice.
Well, gents, speaking for Matt as well, we're really happy to have you both on, and I think this is our first foursome, right, on the podcast. Coz?
Yeah.
I think usually one of us is ducked if there's two guests.
That's potential, yeah.
So I saw us all join. I was skeptical, as I am, right, Quinton?
We did pretty good.
I'm very happy with how it came out. So I'm willing to cheer when we win. Yeah. Hoppy and Quinton, thanks so much for joining us, guys. It's been really a pleasure getting you both on here and being able to explain and showcase some of the synergies we get with our consulting team. We don't all have the same expertise, and we want to overlap at least a little bit along the edges at the very least, because it can kind of, the industry we work in, we are not siloed off. It is all part of one big picture. Yeah, but I guess that should wrap up this episode. So, Mr. Koz, do you have anything to add?
I do not.
I didn't think you did, but I wanted to give you the opportunity.
Secure. Thank you. Thank you.
Yes. I want to thank everybody out there for listening. If you have questions or topics, or you want to talk about what we chatted about here, reach out to your account manager. If you're not a customer, podcast@ivoxy.com will get you there too. Thanks again for listening to Data Center Therapy, y'all. Have a great day.